Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm going to be doing a power ranking because, I was a little bit bored and I am doing fantasy this season, so I decided I'm going to boot up this video, going to do some studying on the teams, and then from there, I'm basically just going to talk about it. I mean, I haven't really done any video content before, so I decided this will be number one, where I just talk about my thoughts on LCS 2024 spring and what how all the teams kind of shaped out. So I decided that I would uh, basically rank all the players to start and kind of see where you know all the power rankings ended up lying, basically score wise. And then I decided whether I would like to change anything based off the strength of the team. So you can see all that data on our screen here. Each team is color coded. You can see the color coding on the left. It is matching on the players. So don't worry about that too much. You get to chill out. You get to just absorb, right? Um, so let's start with the easiest thing to ever talk about in the world. I mean, I feel like everybody, whoever is going to want to look at these teams, is going to think the same thing. C9, obviously, number one. Um, and I think it's no surprise, really. You look at their roster, and you could see on my personal player power rankings, I have them every single role except for support at number one. Commiserations to NRG. They won the league, they beat G2, but you just can't beat the firepower that C9 has put together. They are, frankly, a super team, and we've seen super teams fail before, but I feel like the balance here is pretty good. That's like the main thing that's kind of drawing me towards this team. When I look at these five players, I think of a very balanced team. You have Fudge, who can possibly play weak side, um, and has done that for years because he's had strong AD carries in the past. And Blabber and Fudge always have a pretty good kind of synergy. I will say Fudge does play weak side, but Blabber always tends to play more towards top side than bot side. And I think that's more of a mechanic of being okay with their bot lane kind of playing solo and kind of enjoying how they're able to kind of structure the lane. They don't really take too many risks. They take a lot of easy trades early, making sure that they are able to survive. There is notably a couple change-ups on the roster. You're going to have Jojo Pyun, which, in my opinion, will work so well in this team. When Blabber looked his best, it was when he was paired up with Niski, and they were able to play a very strong mid-jungle style. And I think that's what this team is going to look for. Jojo is a player that is flexible. He has played the very heavy, hard carry champs like Azir, where you farm up and you try and have a good deal of pressure in the lane, where you're able to establish a CS lead, and then extend that to the mid game, where you will then win, team fights repeatedly. But another style that I love seeing Jojo in is when he's playing things like Silas or Galio, which we haven't really seen last season since that wasn't really the meta, but it should still be strong anyways. So that combination of Blabber and Jojo, I mean, it speaks for itself. Yeah, that's the MVP of the league, and then also we have Blabber, who is all-time LCS jungle goat, um, which is pretty much at this point, besides Smithy, no one's really making a case for it, and he's been LCS All Pro first team for the last six splits, something like that. And then Berserker and Vulcan, of course, in the bot lane. Pretty self explanatory. Berserker, the best team fighter in the league, pretty much bar none. His laning is also extremely proficient. I don't have any concrete stats, but when I see a player, I feel like my eye check is usually pretty good. And Berserker kind of checks every single box you'd want from an AD carry. This guy was competing, despite how C9 performed during Worlds, like an all-star AD carry that can compete with anyone, the likes of Gumayushi. And, he really put his case out there, but it didn't matter because the structure of the team had collapsed so much during Worlds. So I think it's a couple changes that are pretty fresh. Vulcan probably just going to be somewhat of a side grade to Sven. I think they were about the same level anyways. I feel like Vulcan had a rough split, last split on FlyQuest, which he was coming into a system that felt kind of broken, and then also Vikla really fell off at that point. So it seemed pretty difficult for him to establish kind of an identity, especially since he was pairing up with Prince, who seems to have a very comfortable way or decided way that he wants to play the game. So, uh, no surprises there to see Vulcan kind of swap rosters, and this is kind of fresh change that you need if you are going to be a successful team. So, C9 first. No surprises. Then we have NRG. Pretty clear second. I feel like first and second is pretty defined in my head. But of course, NRG is a slow starter. So I wouldn't be too shocked to see them fall off just a little bit and then kind of adapt to the meta, figure out their style, and kind of figure it all out. But with this core of Contracts, Palafox, Dokla, FBI, I really think that they will be able to completely figure out the meta quite quickly. So that inspires confidence in me, at least, that they'll be able to adapt. And now they're adding in Huhi. I know some people really like how Ignar kind of complemented the team, especially when that meta did shift over to engage. But Huhi can engage just as well. If anything, that is his comfort as well. So you're not really changing that. What you're adding is a new voice. So it seemed previously that Palafox, Contracts, and Dokla were kind of the voices of the team while the bot lane kind of took a back seat. Um, but if you were watching right, 100 Thieves? No, not 100 Thieves. Excuse me. Golden Guardians last split. You would see all the time who he is commanding attention in the bot lane, and that's going to change how this team plays. But in my mind, anyways, Dokla is already a low resource top laner. No offense to him, but I put him fifth in the power rankings for a reason because when NRG had previously attempted to play through Dokla, it didn't look that great. But when they put Dokla on a strong counter pick and leave him in a side lane, that is when I think NRG looks the best, is when they're playing mid jungle, Contract Palafox, roam bot for FBI Huhi. And now they get to coordinate with a support that's going to talk a lot more. So I feel pretty confident that they'll be able to actually successfully transition to still securing top two in the league. Will they win the split? That's to be seen. But do they have a good shot at it? I think they do. So clear number two for me. And now is when it devolves into chaos because we have a lot of changes in this league. Particularly every single roster that isn't NRG and C9 have 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 changes on the roster. So it's kind of hard to gauge what's going to happen here, but I personally have FlyQuest as my number three. Uh, Backed up by the fact that I have them in the power rankings, and then they end up getting a score that is, you know, lower than the rest of the teams below them, kind of backs up what I was already thinking, which is that this team is going to be quite strong. Um, Jensen didn't have the best split last split. Let's be honest. Dignitas, not a team he looked particularly good on, but I don't think he needs to be that strong to succeed. Whippo and Inspired are extremely competent players. It's a crime. Whippo has not been on a roster for the last couple splits, just doing content. And Inspired, I mean, him and JoJo, yes, I do believe JoJo enabled Inspired to do a lot of things. But him and JoJo really were the best mid jungle in the league. And that was the identity of Evil Geniuses when they were actually strong. Um, but Inspired left, and then you saw how hard it was sometimes for JoJo to kind of establish that presence, especially early game. I feel like JoJo always speaks for himself, does very well, but I felt like Inspired was a good complementary piece towards this mid game. I will say, Inspired does command a lot of attention in the game. I feel like most Inspired teams look the best when you do play through Inspired. So, uh, yeah, they're going to need to figure out how to do that because you have Whippo, who in his career has played weak side. But I don't know for this particular team if I'm going to want to have Big Whippo play weak side. Um, I think back to Fnatic, back in the day, he was playing strong side, but did not get too much attention. He's kind of like Fudge in that way, where you play weak side and then he still turns out strong anyways, which is like a really good quality of some of the best top laners in the league. Um, Inspired, probably will be good. I think the meta also suits him. He loves AP junglers. Of course, Fiddlestick's not in meta, but he has Lilia. He has other things that definitely will be in his wheelhouse. Jensen is going to be the player to watch on this team because I actually think Masu and Busio are going to do relatively fine. I do have Busio quite low on the power rankings, but it's because I wasn't really convinced by his play on 100 Thieves. I felt like his laning was kind of weak. Of course, he is with Double Lift at that point, and Double Lift's not the strongest laner. He's more of a mid game player. But I wasn't really impressed with his uh, engage play in particular. He didn't really find a lot of good angles. It felt like when he's on engage, the team was kind of held back. I felt like he was always better when he was playing those enchanters. Uh, Sometimes his laning would pop off and it would look great, but those were rare cases. So I have to put him low on the power rankings, um, which doesn't affect my overall standing on the team. I still think they're going to be third regardless of how Busio performs, just because of that how strong the top side is. So yeah, I mean getting back to Jensen real quick, I just think he needs to play like he did a couple years ago, and this team is not even a dark horse, but a pretty strong standout favorite for the title here. Uh, so FlyQuest obviously has a good chance. It just depends on Jensen's performance. Will he be able to adapt to Inspired being a more resource heavy jungler? I mean, that's a hard question. I can't answer it myself. So power rankings are always theoretical in nature. So I'd be pretty excited to see whether they're able to actually make the pieces come together and work, but that's to be seen. So with that, FlyQuest number 3 on the power rankings. Moving on, we have Team Liquid. So if you're looking at my score, you'll see Team Liquid is currently ranked number 4, as Team Liquid does, always number 4, uh, over Shopify Rebellion despite having a higher score. Um, there's a couple factors for that. First of all, I'll get into why I think that their score is lower. First of all, I really dislike Yawn. I feel like he is a player that, while he didn't perform particularly poorly, doesn't provide anything for a team that any other AD carry would, basically. He is a very replaceable player in my mind. I don't think he adds anything. And since the Korean experiment is over, I mean, you brought back Impact, who speaks perfect English. Umti also notably speaks English. One of the few Korean players that speaks English. So I love this change of Pyoshik to Umti um, for this team. I just think you probably could have gotten a better AD carry than Yon. Um, I don't know if you'd want to go with someone like Stixay, who was released. Uh, he is currently teamless, most notably. And then there's also a couple other players who should still be available uh, on the table, but I I don't know. I mean, they're trying to give him a fair shake, which I respect. Um, but don't be surprised if he's the first piece to go on this team, in my opinion. Um, if they're able to establish a good lane, which I feel like CoreJJ and Yawn in specific haven't really looked that great, and he doesn't seem to be able to play weak side. So one of the key points of the strongest CoreJJ teams in the world is that you can leave your AD carry. CoreJJ can leave your AD carry, and your AD carry will be fine. They won't die to any they won't die to any dives because they respect it enough to just back off and concede a wave or something. But I haven't seen that. CoreJJ has been babysitting Yawn, and that's kind of a downside of this team. But let's get into why they're number 4, despite all the complaints I kind of put out. I think that APA is a very strong player that got kind of an unfair shake during Worlds. I think he did respectively in all of his games. He performed better than MNS, that's for sure. And MNS apparently was doing great in scrims, which is what I've been hearing in some of these talk shows that I've been listening to. So that's pretty interesting. But he was doing really bad on stage, so something was not clicking. And APA looked fine. I mean, the game where they were against T1 and it looked like they might have won, APA performed respectively against the eventual world champions. They could have won that game very easily. Um, there were a couple of problems with him being kind of disconnected from the team, but I'm not going to blame that on him. The guy's the English speaker in a full Korean speaking team. The only one who can speak to him is CoreJJ and Yon. So his entire top side is just disconnected. Summit doing his own thing every time. So I like this for APA. I feel like it's a good opportunity. He's going to be able to actually show what he's capable in a cohesive team. And then on top of that, you're adding in Umti. So Umti versus Pioshik. Pioshik very, very resource heavy jungler. Of course, he played a bit more of a tanky style when he was playing on TL, but Umti is traditionally the captain. If you watched any of LCK last split, you know about Fred at Brion, the bros. Um, and Umti is the commander. He's the leader of the ship, as they always call him. So having a voice that knows what they want to come out of these games is pretty important. So I definitely put some priority on that being, yes, he's not going to be that high on the rankings as far as players are concerned, but the cohesion he provides is something that's out of game, or it's in game, but not something tangible that we can see in his mechanics. I've always thought Umti was a very good, smart jungler as far as ganking. I've been watching this guy for years. He's an OG uh, in the league for sure, and he's extremely popular. So it's no surprises from me that TL picks this guy up, especially after how close Reddit Brion was to actually making the miracle playoff run. There was a chance that they could have eliminated T1 from playoff contention. They were number 7. They were right there. I mean, T1 got very lucky. Uh, that a couple things shook out with how Faker did get subbed out, but that's a completely different storyline. And here we are with T1 World Champs. But that's just funny to think about. And then the final player, you're gonna have Impact. So here's why TL can't be higher, because I think they're gonna have a problem with what side will be strong side. Because I haven't seen a team play through Impact as strong side since never. Frankly, never. He's always been a strong weak side player you can rely on every single game, no matter what. Even on FlyQuest last split, where FlyQuest was a complete mess, he still looked good. Sure, he wasn't top 4, top 3, but he still looked good. So, shout out. I mean, he's doing his own thing and doing quite well with it. But that means you're going to have weak side top and weak side bot, because I feel like you're gonna have to play through Yawn. Is what That's basically what I'm getting to. Is that you're gonna have to play through Yawn, and yeah, I don't think that's that great in my opinion. Of course, we'll see. I can't. I'm not a prophet, but that's just what I foresee, is that if they're gonna have a hard time playing through Yawn, even if they want to. So unless APA and Umti click really well and they're able to actually just dominate the map mid jungle, I'm gonna have problem with team identity for this team. Um, with that, let's go to. That's all I have on TL. TL's number 4. They could be. I could reasonably see them being 5th or even 6th. But I'm gonna put them at number 4 just because I believe in Umti and what he can kind of provide structure-wise for the team. So that's pretty good. So Shopify Rebellion will be our number 5 spot here, and I think this team's gonna surprise people. I mean, if you look at my power rankings, they're pretty high on the table for a lot of these players. The only one I'm kind of down on is Fake God, but even then, I could see Fake God being the 6th best. Top lane, other than the top 4, is pretty close. Like Dokla, Sniper, Castle, Fake God. I feel like pretty contentious there. Which one do you put where? I feel like Dokla probably stand out above the rest, but Sniper, Castle, Fake God, I don't have a good metric. I watched Fake God's games on DSG, and I thought he looked good, a lot better than he did last time he was in the LCS. So that gives me some hope that he can at least be a respectable top laner in the league. But let's not sugarcoat it. This team really comes down to Insanity and Boogie. They looked really good on TSM last split, and they were the standout players by far on that team. They provided early game aggression. They changed up how drafts would be played. You had Graves mid 3 games in a row. Looked great on it every single time. Insanity was making people pay for not knowing these mid matchups. And that's the kind of spice you need to go from a bottom feeder team to a top 6 playoff team, you know? You need to have something that makes you stand out. And that's something that's notably lacking from the teams below them, in my opinion. I feel like 100 Thieves, Immortals, and Dignitas don't really have that spice. Well, Dignitas we'll get to. They have some spice, but it's all in one player. But yeah, so Shopify, they have Insanity Boogie, that's an identity. And then they have B-Boy slash Wild Turtle. So I'm not that familiar with B-Boy. Um, I watched a couple of his games when he did go to Worlds, I believe. And he looked okay. As far as I can tell, just a fine 80 carry, likes to play scaling picks, doesn't dominate lane too often. Kind of, honestly, just plays like Wild Turtle. Wild Turtle, I feel like this meta is going to be great for Wild Turtle. He's back on his utility 80 carries. He won't have his, very famous Jinx, but Jin is a pick Wild Turtle was really good at when Jin was meta back, maybe like season 7, yeah. Um, season 6 as well, I believe. Either way, Jin, very strong champion. Back in the meta for sure. Varus, also very good for Wild Turtle and B-Boy. I know that for sure. So I'm feeling like the meta has shaked out in a good way for Shopify, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where that team goes. Zazel, of course, has been grinding in Tier 2 forever. Since the last time he was on C9 and they won the split. Which is just funny. The guy won on C9, went to semifinals, and then just instantly got cut and went straight down all the way the ladder to Tier 2. So a little bit unfortunate, but it's good to see him back. And I think Zazel also watched his games on DSG, so it's good he has some cohesion with some other teammates. Fake God already knows how Zazel wants to play, and now it's just about can you insert these two DSG pieces into the already established TSM core that was looking up and up and up every single game. So pretty exciting stuff there. Shopify Rebellion will be my number 5 slotted team. Going to be exciting. And then we have, of course, team number 6. So I've been looking at Twitter a bunch, and I've been seeing 100 Thieves either 6th, 7th, or 8th. Every single time, there's people putting them in 8th, and I feel like it's a little bit disingenuous. I find it so hard to believe that they're going to be worse than Immortals or Dignitas. Immortals I can kind of see, but Dignitas I feel like I'm not convinced at all, to be honest. So we'll get to them, but 100 Thieves, they have Sniper, River, Quid, Meech, and Ayla. Um, very different team compared to last split. The only player that's retained is Quid, surprisingly, because, well, to be honest, he didn't have the greatest split to start off. He came in, showed he was an Azir specialist, didn't play Azir particularly well, didn't dominate any of these late games that you would expect. It always looked like Doublelift was the entire team. 400 Thieves, I mean, part of that is it felt like Closer was kind of disconnected with Quid, so I feel like based off principle alone, I cannot rate 100 Thieves below 7th or 8th on the power rankings. Um, because River is on this team. And in the history of LCS, no team, no player single-handedly has been able to propel as many teams on his own to being at least at the bottom of playoffs. I think to when River first came in, I believe he played on Apex. Let me double check this real quick. Nope, not Riverside. River lol. Okay. Yeah, when River first came in, he was on Dignitas, and before that, was on Talon, and Talon is a PCS team that did not look that great. And then they signed River, and they're at Worlds every single time. Yeah, and then he joins the league, joins on Dignitas, does extremely well. I'm not too sure where they placed, but at least he looked good. He looked by far the best player. Whenever he played Jarvan, you knew that it was going to be a banger. So, just on principle alone, I have to put River at that number 3 because I feel like he does so well. That's going to be a little contentious since some people will say Inspired or Boogie have been playing better. But I feel like Golden Guardians, when River wasn't playing well, they looked bad. Sometimes. Well, depends on how bot lane was playing. Especially like if Hui and Stixay had a good game, Golden Guardians was playing good. So, just based off the principle that River should be able to enable his laners with his very gank heavy style, Sniper and Quid should have a good time. And I think Meech is actually a good player as well. Watched him on DSG as well in that finals. Um, was respectable. I was actually thinking like, is Meech better than Tactical and Tomo? I don't know. I can't say because they haven't played against each other. That matchup I haven't seen. Um, but Meech looked good. I mean, I had no complaints at all from watching their games. Um, so I definitely would put them pretty strong. I mean, it's another 80 carry that I feel like will just play their role, but that's fine. You want to rely on Sniper, who's been this hyped up prodigy forever. I'm only putting him at 6 because these other 5 players have experience in the league and they've already proven themselves. Sniper's got things to prove. He needs to raise himself up to be the top of the ladder. So we'll see if he's able to do that, but he's unproven at the moment. Uh, and from what I've heard and what I've seen, he's never been amazingly stand out in tier 2. He's just been solid. So seeing the transition to LCS is going to be very curious for me. Besides that, I think they should have a good late game identity where they basically early game is up to River, do whatever you can figure out to do, and then mid game they transition to Quid and Sniper and Meech kind of playing all these late game carries. I kind of want to see this team play a 1-1-4 style where you always have Sniper splitting. I feel like that would be a good identity, especially with the new Grub meta. I feel like they could have a good kind of shakeout on the meta there. So definitely a team to watch out for, but I feel like there's some problems here. I feel like there's gonna be some problems that prevent them from getting very far. We'll end up seeing though. An Ayla, I'm not that convinced on. I don't think he looked particularly good. Of course, there was like the whole Vulcan Ayla drama. I still have Vulcan at number 2. I feel like FlyQuest was such a dysfunctional team that neither of them looked that great. But even when Ayla was on EG, I don't think he was that standout. That team was a lot about Armao and JoJo linking up, finding plays throughout the map. So, yeah, wasn't particularly convinced. So, then that's going to be it for 100 Thieves. We're going to move on to our last 2 teams. We got Immortals and Dignitas. Let's start with Immortals. So, I kind of had to look into some of these players. Castle previously was playing on KT Challengers, and KT Challengers did okay. They didn't play amazing, but they definitely played respectably. As far as placings, I think they got 4th or something, which is good. It's okay. I just don't see them as a standout team. I feel like you could have picked up Revenge, who or Licorice, who are both sitting it out on this league, and would have been fine. Everyone's flaming them for it, for not picking up either of those players. Revenge, top 3. I think he was all pro. And Licorice was literally first team all pro. These are 2 players that should be in the league by all metrics, but somehow don't land a spot. And I think it comes to this weird import. I feel like Castle is not a necessary piece. If you put Licorice on this team, I'm like, okay, you have a solid core then. You have Armeo, Tactical, and Ole. I don't know how Ole's doing. He's back from military service. He grinded out. He was rank 1 on Korea for a very long time. So it's hard to say. I would say this team just ends up looking lacking identity yet again. That's a lot. That's a lot of the cases with these lower tier teams, where I don't see the win cons as much as I do on these other teams, and that's what it comes down to. Armeo, a good facilitating jungler, plays a lot of tank play. Mask seems to be kind of like an Azir player. Um, Not necessarily. He plays a lot of Azir Silas, from what I remember. It was tough to decide whether Dove or Mask is better, and if you look at the points, that literally decided which team was higher ranked. Um, and since I don't believe in either team, whatever team ended up with less points from my system is going to be higher ranked. So, that's something that kind of interestingly shakes out in a good way. So Jace, Azir, Silas, Ari, these are the picks he played last year. I don't know, could be good. I feel like he has a decently flexible champion pool, which is nice. That's something you can play around. And then I think the team identity is I'm going to play through tactical, and tactical played way better in this last split. If you were watching, so that's at least something to feel confident in. Ole always been a decent laner. He's just had questionable decisions after lane. So I'm curious to see if he's still going to hold up in that regard. And then, yeah, Castle plays a lot of Gnar, and Kasante kind of sounds similar to another Korean top laner. So I'm hoping it's not going to be like Summit. So we'll see. And with that, we're just going to go back onto Dignitas. So Dignitas has an identity. Congratulations, you have an identity. But the identity is extremely difficult to play. Um, with the new map changes, I think Rich has the opportunity to carry the shit out of this team. I feel like he's going to be much safer in top lane. He already favored picks like a Glaoui that is traditionally super unsafe because it is so punishable if you don't get off the ground. Um, of course, Alawi sucks because she lost some access to some close walls. But he has other picks that he has played in the past that have been strong. I think he plays Quinn into Renekton, things like that. So Rich is going to need to carry this team, and it's not close. I feel like every other role there are question marks. XU played okay in tier 2. Dove, most real notably, recently played on IG and LPL. His stats did not look that great, but again, you're against the best mid laners in the world. You're not going to have good looking stats. So, I don't discredit him for that. I discredit him for the other part, which is what he got benched by IG, which not the best look. I'm pretty sure he got benched because actually 16, 17. Let me see. 17 times 2? No, he played the whole season. Yeah. Wait, I think so. Let me double check. I don't want to be wrong on this. It looks like he played the whole season, and it did not look good for IG. I'm not going to lie. They lost a lot. They ended up around 50% win rate, which is not bad. But Dove was not a standout player in any way, so I'm not going to put him that highly ranked. He could honestly come out and be better than APA, just because he is against the best mid laners in the world. But that's unproven to me. I don't think he would stand out on IG at all. I mean, I think the standout player on IG when I was watching a couple of their games was usually their top laner and their AD carry, which is Nenny and On. But Dove just kind of played a facilitator role. I mean, he plays carry champions for sure, but he doesn't really look like he is the best when he is on the carry champs. It looks a lot better when he's on those facilitating picks, like the Galio or like I think he played some Gragas, but it didn't look amazing. There were some weird picks, but yeah, the game didn't turn out particularly well for Dove. So I'm really putting everything on the Rich basket for this team. If Rich just carries every game, I mean, it doesn't matter what I put them as. Um, so that's probably going to be what we see. I mean, Tomo Isles, I feel like Tomo, a respectable AD carry. Nothing that stands out too much. Uh, really was a passenger on Dig last year, which kind of sucks because I feel like they needed Tomo to play very strong so they could take some pressure off of Rich. Um, but didn't particularly do well in lane, and then in late game it felt like, yeah, you could rely on Tomo in some capacity, but he isn't like a Cody Sun in 2020 or a FBI in 2022. So it was kind of middling at best. And Tomo has previously had some really good supports in the past, and I don't think he's gonna get that great of a support in the way of Isles. No flame to the guy. It's just like you have tough competition, to be honest. So gonna need to see if they're able to find anything. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the rest of this video. I mean, this was my first real analysis video that I'm gonna be uploading to the channel. So if you did like it, drop a like, maybe subscribe. I might be doing more of these because I've been interested in doing some content on the sidelines, and I do watch so many leagues, so it would be cool to be able to put in my kind of insight every now and then. And if you want any other styles of videos, drop a comment. Very excited to see how this LCS 2024 spring ends up shaking out. But yeah, that's about it from me. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.